In his gospel, John tells us that on their journey back to Galilee, Jesus had to go through Samaria. An interesting comment, seeing how this was a route that the Jews typically avoided. But good shepherd that he was, Jesus chose this route through Samaria in order to seek out a woman at Jacob's well, who had a string of failed relationships and was now living with a man who didn't even think enough of her to put a ring on her finger. This was someone that Jesus wanted to meet. Ministering to women is nothing new for us at Institutional Ministries, but we've been altering our approach in order to reach out to more women. Join me and a few of my colleagues as we tell you a little bit more about this ministry. All right, Sarah, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about how our ministry to women has changed over the years?
I think that would take us back to about 20 years ago when I was called to be on the staff of the Institutional Ministries. Chaplains on staff were recognizing that while they were awesome in being able to develop rapport with people, when it came to women, and especially those that had been abused, that there was a barrier that was difficult to cross, and that these women, it was difficult for them to be vulnerable and to open up to a man. And so in that instance, they thought it would be a great situation to call a woman to do ministry with other women. And one of the joys I've had is also to be able to share that and bring other women on board as volunteers. Women from congregations who want to be able to serve and work with other women. And so that's been one of my greatest joys, is to get other women to volunteer for the ministry.
And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are probably unaware of in our ministry, and that is the role that volunteers can play in this ministry. For over a century, our paradigm for ministry has basically been to rely on our called workers to do the work. That limits the amount of ministry we can do to the number of called workers we have on staff. In an attempt to reach out and have more ministry being done, we've been enlisting the support of volunteers, and that's where you come in, Liz. So, Liz, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your role is?
Well, I've been working with Sarah to help recruit more women volunteers to help specifically in the nursing home and in institutional corrections with women. As Sarah mentioned, there's an advantage for women working with women. One example of this would be mothers with mothers. Essentially, there are the emotions and the ties that mothers have regarding their families with one another that helps them to have more of a connection and to relate to one another. Another advantage to this, as Sarah mentioned, is that sometimes there was a disconnect between men working with women, and so this kind of removes the potential barrier that would be there of the uncomfortableness for women working with men and helping the ministry in doing this.
I actually heard an example of that from Michelle, who came to the women's volunteer gathering you guys did. She says that some of the women that she sees are taught pretty young to seek out men's attention, to put on that pretty face, as she describes it, and be alluring. But with her, they don't have to put on that mask. With her, they can be real. And so as a woman, she doesn't have to deal with those kinds of distractions in her ministry.
It's amazing how God uses these small connections in our ministry. One of our longtime volunteers, Judy, mentioned lately that she went into a Bible class and one of the women there mentioned about her freshly painted nails, something that she is unable to do where she is at the moment. Through this small connection, they were able to relate to one another on a more readily basis, which also helped to facilitate the gospel more in the ministry that day. Just a small, subtle difference.
Yeah, I think it is those subtle connections that allow us to develop the rapport and the trust to get into some of the deeper issues that then can be talked about. An example of that is in Bible study one day at the jail, and we began with our prayer requests, and one of the things the ladies wanted to pray about is to share that her 3-year-old daughter was having a birthday that day. And she said that with tears, and those tears were felt by all the rest of the group, including myself, and the pain in missing that, and the guilt in not being there as a mother. And so in that place of sadness, we all could relate, and in that was the beauty of what women's ministry is, to be able to share God's encouragement and love and hope even in a dark place like that we were all feeling that pain together. And I find that is the beauty of women-to-women ministries.
After Jesus revealed himself as the Messiah, the woman at Jacob's well went and told the good news to others. Telling people about Jesus is the privilege that's been given to Christians down through the centuries, regardless of their gender. Women-to-women ministry is just one of the many ways our ministry is reaching out more and more with the gospel. Join us again next time as we continue to explore the many ways Institutional Ministries is seeking out Jesus' other sheep.